Today we're going to be looking at the Timeline Storyteller from Microsoft Corporation for Power BI. This is probably my favorite type of visualization, and it's free, available in the Microsoft Store. I will leave the link in the description. To install this visualization in Power BI, you just have to click on the link and then click on Get It Now, agree to let them sell it to you, and then it'll take you to another link where you download the visualization to your computer. Once you have this visualization downloaded to your computer, you can install it on the visualizations pane by importing the visualization from the file. Click on OK on the caution warning, then navigate to where you saved your file, the PBIViz file, and then load it. I already have it loaded over here automatically because, well, I really like this visualization. Where I'm going to be using this data today is with my AthLinks history. AthLinks is a website that gathers all sorts of race data from all around the world. And it's pretty amazing. I've been able to compile a lot of my race results over here over the years of me doing different racing events from the very beginning. And I didn't realize the value until relatively recently. AthLinks is also a place where you can see that there are many other people in the world with your same name, and some of them are quite a bit faster than you. But enough about that. So my overall stats right now are pretty good. There's a lot of stuff in here that I thought I would never be able to do. Racing miles, I have 308 miles over my history. I never thought I'd be able to finish a sub 2-hour half marathon or a 4.5-hour marathon. I have a lot of results over the years, and all of this started back in 2011 when I ran my first 5K. It's hard to tell this story in terms of just looking at numbers because this doesn't describe the big picture. I transcribed all of this data into a spreadsheet, and I realized that apart from the metrics, in terms of how well you did, your average pace, and your placement, there's other things that are involved in the story. And that's what we're going to be looking at today in Power BI. So when you use a timeline storyteller, I'm going to go ahead and open this up. There are a few different things that you need to focus in on. First of which being your start and end dates. What is the date range that's going to be covered by your data? If you drag the date field from your data over into the start and end dates, everything else will sort itself out. I have a lot of races spanning over the years. The rest of the timeline is decided by what you want to have as your facet. Another fancy word for facet, I guess an easier word for facet for me would be the aspect you want to describe, as well as the category. So combining facet, your aspect or facet and category is going to decide what kind of story that you're telling today. I used to think that maybe the primary thing I needed to talk about was, okay, what type of race am I doing, and what type, and what's my overall placement, the overall decile over quartile of my placement. So if I look at my overall, the quartile of my placement, if I placed in the top 25%, next 25%, or bottom 25%, that would be the primary aspect of the racing history. And if I'm looking at the facet, which is the race type, okay, so I'm going to change this. This is looking at linear and faceted. So it's going to split out my data along the lines of the type of race or the aspect that I chose for the facet over here. So I have in my racing history some 5Ks, a bunch of half marathons, and obstacle course races. And you can see a clear progression over here in terms of length of race, but this doesn't describe a lot of the story. Maybe if I wanted to give this some more context, I could add some content text over here, such as my average pace. So when I load in my average pace and I look at the facets, right? So I started off doing a 5K, and my first 5K, even though it felt like death, I finished in the top 50%. And hovering over here. So I finished with an average pace time of 10.5 minutes per mile. And my second one, I also finished at a little bit faster than 10.5 minutes per mile, but I ended up finishing in the first quartile. The difference here being that I don't have enough context over here, but this second race was also supporting disabled athletes. So when you're finishing in the first quartile against people pushing themselves in wheelchairs and hand carts and stuff like that, you're not going to be posting this on social media that this is how well you did on your race. But also, I have some of these things in the mix too. In my history, right? I have some and not applicables. I have two races over here that I did not finish, and it was quite difficult because, well, there's some additional context that we don't have over there. So what if we changed the way that we use the facets and the categories? What else was going on in my life to make this an applicable story or to make this story interesting? So let's go ahead and take out the facets, the categories, and let's take a look at some of the other ways that I've categorized my data. One of the things that I've done when I've gone back into the data is that I take some reflection to give some more categorization to these measures, because it's really the categorization that makes the story come alive. So the purpose of my running has changed a lot over the years, and a lot of that has been attributed to cancer. I've had cancer a couple times, first time in 2012 and then the second time in 2013. And the way that this affects the story is quite immense. Let's go ahead and take a look. So if I'm looking at my running facet, is that what I put over here? Along with using the race type as the category. All right. So the race type is going to be represented in colors over here to simplify everything. And let's take a look at the categories. All right. So over the years, I've had a storied history with running. First, I'm trying to save my health in the very beginning. Run some 5Ks. I ran a half marathon, and then cancer happened right over here, and I was pretty glad to have survived it and ran another 5K and then another half marathon in celebration of that. I was planning to run a marathon over here, but cancer number 2 happened, so it knocked me back down the list, and I had a 5K in recovery from that, a half marathon that I didn't end up finishing in recovery from that, as well as this, my first marathon a year after coming out of chemotherapy. So one of the cool things that you can do when you have some facets, right, is that you can organize things into this circular or radial view. And it'll give you, well, the organization of this could certainly be a little bit better. But let me try out a different facet over here. Okay. So when you have a lot of facets, it's difficult to see what's going on. But I've simplified this a little bit more. And let's see what we can get out of this. So from my data, I have simplified the purpose over here. And, oh wait, hold on. Let me go ahead and reload this data. Okay, so adding purpose into the facet, and then adding the race type into the category. Oh, that's what it was. I didn't load it into facet, I loaded it into content. Okay. So I want to use this radial view, and now it's not going to be, hopefully it's not going to be as busy. So the first reason that I started running was to lose weight, save my health. And I have 3 races in that category. But by far, the biggest reason or the purpose for most of my running career has been about cancer survival and then going beyond cancer survival. So I have, if I'm going to take a sequential look at this, okay, I have 15 runs over here. No, sorry, 8 runs over here in my celebration of cancer survival category. And I have 17 runs over here in my going beyond cancer survival category. This is what makes storytelling a much better process. So the first 3 events that I did for losing weight, that I'm not sure how far I would have made it if a big life event didn't happen to give me some additional depth of purpose. Relative to each other, I guess, and you know what, looking at this in a linear fashion might make a little bit more sense. Relative, there we go, to the big picture. So running, a couple 5Ks and a half marathon we focused on weight loss because, I was not happy with how round I got at that point in my life, versus the survival of life and the survival of, the celebration of being able to go beyond just surviving is a much different story. It tells the facets that it focuses on is much different. There's also there's another configuration that I want to share with you guys, and we can go back to the original view right now. So chronologically, in terms of race type, let's use race type as the facet again, and then use the difficulty level as the categorization. So I've been able to do, and I wish I was able to reorder these items in the legend, but we'll go ahead and leave that be for now. In the very beginning, and let's take a sequential look at this. Or maybe not. Where did my data go? Okay, so in all of my events, I have had a progression of difficulty for all these types of races. And I think I'd prefer to use my race type. Oh, here we go. Okay. Sequential, chronological. Okay. So over the years, I started off with very, very weak cardio. Doing a 5K was the absolute most that I could manage. And I guess for content, we can use the average pace minutes. Looking at the doing a 5K in the very beginning, 2011, this was a time where I ran so hard that I had to stop at after a mile and a half, and I puked in the bushes. And I ran at 10.5 minutes per mile over here. And doing 0.18 seconds per mile better, I guess, is some improvement. But this is all out effort over here. At this point in my life, half marathon was the never could I ever item. So I'm doing all these races at different points in my life, and maybe you know what? Oh no, I'm going to describe it in this method first. And doing this first half marathon, I go from doing 10.5 minutes per mile to 12, almost 12.5 minutes per mile, and this is also an all-out effort over here, high effort. My second 5K relative to this was so much easier. I did a minute per mile faster because relative to the half marathon, 5K was nothing. Okay, so this is the progression. The progression looks like this. I do a race, and I think this is the hardest I can do. I do something longer, and then everything below that is an easier effort. Except when cancer happened over here, and my first 5K after cancer was an all-out effort just to walk or power walk each mile. It was pretty heartbreaking. The same thing went for this half marathon I tried to do during my recovery about 5 months after graduating chemo, and that did not go so well. I ran about 12 minutes per mile, and I cramped up about 100 meters before the finish line. They had to carry me across the finish. I got a DNF on that one. When I did my first marathon to celebrate the nurses that saved my life, this was an all-out effort as well. And a mix of running and walking and hobbling got me to 13.6 minutes per mile, which I I spent the last half of this race swearing off the marathon as something that would never ever happen again. Which, of course, it happened again. I wanted to get revenge on the marathon because I didn't want my last marathon to be something I finished while whining and crying. But this was something I nearly did not finish, but I persisted hobbling after my legs cramped out. And it showed me, right, the value of persistence. So after a couple marathons, right? So first the 5K is the all out. Second, the half marathon is the all out. Then I have a couple all out efforts at the 26.2 mile distance. Now, doing half marathons is not a big deal. And not only that, doing a 5K was super easy, even though I wasn't going like that fast. This was done. I never thought that 5Ks could be done basically conversationally. Running for me was something that I was always huffing and puffing all the way through. Needed to keep motivational stuff in my head all the way through. Incredibly difficult. And then something magical happened where there was a couple half marathons that ended up being easy for me because relative to my obstacle course racing that I did after I met some fitness my fitness family, the tribe, half marathons were easy peasy, especially because they were long and flat and it didn't involve me having to conquer my fear of heights or pull myself up or do burpees. Everything is relative over here. And the ease at which I do all other events, including an easy half marathon, it's difficult to describe the journey in terms of how does somebody change so much in a period of time. This is a decade, and a whole lot of life has happened outside of this. I've been trying to tell this story for so many years, but it's been so difficult to tell this story. This is what I've wanted to share with people. If you keep doing the things that you never thought you could ever do again, and you know what, let me change this up just a little bit. So I'm going to change the facet over here to the category of never ever. So at different points in my life, different efforts were the never ever type of event. And what category should I use? I guess race type seems to be a pretty good one. Okay, so I've been doing different types of runs throughout my life. And let's take a look at the faceted view and the radial fashion. And let's go segmented. Okay. So in my life, I started off doing some 5Ks. And when I was doing a 5Ks, and even after that first half marathon, I thought for sure the half marathon was something I should never ever do again. But after that second half marathon, I was sure, and for the longest time, 16 races, I was sure that a full marathon was just completely out of the question. Full marathon being my full effort. It was so uncomfortable for so many years because I hated running. I was, I had a lot of health challenges, and full marathon, despite me having done two of them, was something I swore off both times until I was able to complete a marathon at this. What is it? Let me give the difficulty level over here. Oops, I resetted it. Sorry, everyone. Okay, so my difficulty level, until I had an easy time doing a marathon, or medium time, I should say. This was, and half marathons and 5Ks were low efforts. Then ultra marathons were the only thing that I thought, oh, I could never do an ultra. I can do a marathon at a medium effort, but ultras are totally out of the question. I could never. And when I finally did some marathons at low and medium efforts, I realized that there's no more limits. I put this triathlon as my never could I ever because I'm simply afraid of the open water. I'm confident I could learn how to bicycle given the time, but conquering fears, especially that fear of open water where you could drown if you mess it up pretty badly, it's something that still remains in my mind. But distance wise, I have no more limits. I just need time to train, and I've found people to train with. And most of the time I train on my own. So using the Power BI Storyteller has helped me focus my storytelling ability. You can use this record scene item over here to tell more of the story, and I'll go over that in the next part of this. But mostly I wanted to show you the difference between using facets and categories along with content text to give your storytelling a different focus. Thanks for watching.